Judges ready? Audience ready? My desk is a mess. You see, I have books stacked feet high, papers spread everywhere, and somewhere within the disaster zone is my cat Sammy. I hope. I've tried to declutter, but every time I get close to tossing something out or finally returning that book to the library, I panic. Am I really ready to get rid of that? Maybe I should read it just one more time. Because you see, my desk is an accurate representation of who I am as a person. I'm a mess. For knowledge. Albert Einstein once said, if a cluttered desk is a sign of a cluttered mind, of what then is an empty desk a sign? Much to my parents' chagrin, my desk is messy. But for many Americans, the metaphorical desk is empty. We have developed a loathing for logic, a contempt for contemplation, a rejection of reasoning. In short, we have an issue with intelligence. Willful ignorance is not simply a lack of knowledge, but the intentional refusal to acknowledge information that's somehow inconvenient. We've become so comfortable trusting our own emotions and beliefs that we've thrown logic to the wayside in our decision to remain ignorant. And this is my concern. By seeing only what's comfortable, we've changed our country from a land of opportunity to a nation of stagnation. But today, as we wrap our minds around this issue, let's first dust off our desks with some causes. Then we'll consult a few books and papers for effects. And finally, let's reclutter our desks and our minds with some solutions to our problem with proficiency. Growing up, my tendency towards messiness did cause some problems. I mean, it's a reasonable cause for concern when the sheer amount of stuff piled on a surface makes it impossible to see the kid behind it. However, not even my parents' constant lectures on the importance of tidying up could halt my hunt for information, however messy it may have been. And this caused me to wonder why people in general are so attracted to willful ignorance. As it turns out, there are two main causes. We don't like change, and we don't like to really think. We as people are hardwired to resist new developments, especially if they go against what society tells us is true. A 2010 study published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology shows that people are instinctively drawn towards things or ideas that have been around longer, even when newer concepts are more logical or effective. When facts contradict something you believe or wish to believe, it's only natural to reject the inconvenient truth in favor of what's known, and therefore psychologically preferable. And this makes us completely unable to admit that we're wrong. By sticking so strongly to our beliefs, we allow opportunities for growth to pass us by, instead choosing to remain blissfully unaware by steadfastly clinging to false ideas. We don't want to risk being wrong, and this makes us completely unable to learn what's right. But even more than this, willful ignorance is so prevalent because it allows us to cling to what is easy. In the words of Henry Ford, thinking is the hardest work there is, which is probably the reason so few engage in it. But if we continue to see thought, true thought that breaks through convention to land on innovation, as a burden, we will undoubtedly continue to stand still. Our fear, our apathy, and our pride grow, while our opportunities, our progress, and our ideas shrink. And we are living in a country as empty as our desks. So I'll admit it, sometimes an overly messy desk can be problematic, but myself and my fellow slobs seem to be doing pretty okay. It's when we eliminate the clutter that we begin to run into problems. Without my books and papers, I don't know where I'd be, but I do know where my country is. Willful ignorance is dangerous, and its effects can be disastrous. By keeping our heads down and our eyes shut, we've allowed ourselves to become a society of no substance, seeing what is easy and ignoring what is true. We can even see it in the people we choose to lead us. Campaigns, especially for the presidential election, often focus more on proving which candidates are most likable or exciting, rather than which are most qualified to run our country. In 2000, George W. Bush was voted the presidential candidate you'd most like to share a beer with. But unfortunately, the presidency isn't a bar crawl. By electing our leaders based solely on relatability, we limit ourselves to people who may be fit for beer drinking, but not country leading. Now, I'm not saying that the Harvard graduate Mensa scholar is always the best candidate. What I am saying is that people who consciously underwrite their intelligence are not the people Americans should trust to run our country. Thomas Wyatt of the Huffington Post writes, "In order to be successful politically, to avoid being called smug, aloof, elitist, or out of touch, you must pretend you're not smart, educated, or at all qualified to run the country. No matter what side of the political spectrum you fall on, it's clear to see that candidates would rather pull the wool over voters' eyes in sticky situations than be clear on where the problems truly lie. And if we can't trust our leaders to be honest and knowledgeable about key issues, who can we trust to be the torchbearers of change? By refusing to think for ourselves, we allow our leaders to perpetuate ignorance that hurts all of us. In our daily lives, we can feel the disconnect created by our mindset, but some of us more than others. While we continue to fall back on antiquated ideas, historically marginalized groups continue to be pushed to the side. In America today, a country that prides itself on its message of equality and opportunity, we can't seem to look past old ideas that state that religion or ethnicity or gender are somehow indicative of character. By continuing to refuse to think on our own, we allow ourselves to remain people who see Hispanic as synonymous with criminal, African American as identical to thug, Muslim as interchangeable with terrorist, and female as equal to weak. These stereotypes may once have played an immense role in our culture, but we should have progressed enough to understand that the people we label still fall under the category of human. And the facts we're choosing not to see would allow us to understand that these labels are not only unjust, but untrue. The knowledge we'd rather not acknowledge can help us understand that labeling people based on opinions or judgments only labels us as ignorant. Because we're so scared of living in a culture where our beliefs may be threatened, we're willing to put others down in favor of antiquated ideas. We aren't valuing reality. We're valuing that which makes us most comfortable, the truth we wish was true. So, how do we eliminate willful ignorance and learn to reclutter? Because as former President George W. Bush of beer drinking fame once said, rarely is the question asked, is our children learning? And he raises a valid point. Is they? But luckily we don't have to remain in the dark, and we can all someday hope to embrace the clutter of knowledge. First, we can keep an open mind. People from all viewpoints and walks of life have something to offer, and it's only through a willingness to listen that we can expose ourselves to new ideas and opportunities for growth. We need to understand that opposing ideas are not wrong ideas. And by listening to new perspectives, we can only create a more accepting, considerate culture. We can't be expected to agree with everything, but we can give all sides of an issue a chance and make sure that we're informed. But much like a messy desk, not all clutter is good clutter. Eliminating willful ignorance requires not only information, but a willingness to think critically. Accepting anything and everything at face value opens the door for mass misinformation, which only leads to an even faultier understanding of what's true and what's exaggerated. We must be willing not only to see uncomfortable facts, but also to think for ourselves in order to evaluate what's true and what's simply false. Socrates once said, "I know that I am intelligent because I know that I know nothing." He probably had a messy desk too. But what he's saying is we can never stop learning. When we recognize knowledge as a strength, we create amazing things. But when we begin to view it as a handicap, we lose our ability to grow. As for me, while I may be messy, at least I'm messy for a good cause. However, it might be time for me to clean off my desk a little bit. I can stand to get rid of a few books and papers and spread the knowledge with others, while continuing to explore more. Because as we all know, Knowledge is power.